I'm Dr. Ashley, and this is From Her Point of View.
So we're at the end of season 1.
We are.
We're at the end of season 1. So we're going to do a little recap, just talk about how things went, what our perspectives are. I thinking back to the beginning, I think maybe the initial post or the initial episode where we talked about the reason why we were doing this.
Mm-hmm.
And we we did this because we felt it was important for women to have an open forum to talk about the issues that directly affect them and how they're dealing with them and how they can support one another. Having gone through the episodes that we have presented, I feel like we have accomplished that mission. And it gives us a little bit more fuel to continue to do so.
I agree. So the podcast recording for me was a sense of revelation going back to, like you said, why we started this. We started it because at the time, there wasn't a platform that we knew of where women were having candid, open conversations with one another, right? We talk all the time. If you ask me, I would tell you that our conversations are epic. And I feel like everybody should be a part of it. And that's where the concept came from. Um, the consideration of conducting a podcast was not something that I thought we would ever do, although I thought about it, right? So we all have that fear or notion to want to do something, but then fear talks us out of it. And I'm just glad that we took the initiative to get started over a year ago, right? And we're here now and we have recordings and it's posted. And based on the feedback that we receive, it's actually a good thing. So I'm excited about what season 2 is to bring with the conversations that we're going to be having.
I think you hit the nail right on the head. We have kept the conversations going. We have the women there. They were freely giving input. I felt like when everyone started talking and really started sharing, that they felt comfortable and even may have felt that that type of forum was needed as well. So, like I said, I think we really have accomplished the mission and kind of set a foundation for where we'll go moving forward into season 2.
Yeah, I agree.
As we started in the beginning, like I said, we talked about the reason why we were doing this, and we gave a little foundation about who we are, what we're bringing to this, um, and maybe some of the different challenges that we've encountered. And then we came to the current situation that the world is facing right now. We moved into the COVID-19 pandemic and the social unrest that's happening in the world right now. While that wasn't necessarily the main focus of the podcast as we started to record it and we, created the vision for it, I think it was important for us to address those things because they were so relevant. They are so relevant right now, and they are affecting and shaping the lives of the women, the audience, and the participants within our podcast. They're directly affected by what's going on right now.
And in like with the social media sites, Facebook, Instagram, email, we're giving people that opportunity to share with us their experiences through the conversations that we're having, whether it be a question or a comment. Like we encourage that. We want to know how you feel. We want to know if it helped you or if it didn't help you. We want to know if something that we said or something someone else said may have sparked the conversation between you and somebody else. And where did that conversation go? Those are the conversations that we want to have. And those are the goals that we have for ourselves in the end. What are we doing this for? How is it affecting other people? And I think, like I said, the beginning of this was a good start. It was very open. It was very impromptu. to
Mhm.
say. We just kind of just do it and hope for the best. But the feedback has been great.
And that feedback we want to encourage into season 2.
Yes.
So for for the new listeners that may be just coming on board and starting to listen now, I want you to go back to the beginning and I want you to listen to all of the episodes. And I want you to engage. So we are available on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and on Podbean. I want you, when you listen, I want you to go into the comments and share your feedback. I want you to go and engage on the Facebook pages because that's that fuels the conversation. We want to hear how you feel about what you've heard and even express maybe some things that you haven't heard and that you want to hear because
Mhm.
that's going to shape the conversation as we move forward.
I agree. Yeah, absolutely. That's our aim at this point going into season 2. Going back to the beginning sets the foundation of why we started, right? And then you can kind of get a grasp on how we started
Mm-hmm.
if it's something that you're considering. Because like I said, for us personally, the challenge was more so getting over the fear of doing it. We got over that and we did it. And now we're here. The social climate change has, I don't want to say thrown us off track, but it opened up a different forum of conversation
Right.
to have. And because of the current social climate, we want to go into season 2 still discussing those things, those hard conversations that people are not having openly and honestly with one another. But we also want to keep the content fun and interesting. So
Mm-hmm.
we're definitely open to what it is that our viewers have to say.
And then even thinking about the social climate, think of all the new conversations that have been sparked because of what we've gone through. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, people have been out of work. There has been despair, depression, anxiety. People have lost people. Um, and then thinking about the social unrest. I mean, people have been experiencing protests and riots and other things that were just not they were happening, but they were not as profound and prolific as they are right now. When they were when we these things were happening when we were first recording, but when we really started moving into this and things started really happening, there's a whole other set of conversations that come from what has been recently happening.
Yeah, the
And
media has done an amazing job, good and bad, presenting to us the things that are happening in the world.
mhm,
Whereas, like you said before, we were experiencing it before, but the media has decided to put it all on the forefront. So it's unavoidable what's
mhm,
happening right now. And it's up to us to have those conversations so that we can all get through it together. No
mhm,
one is alone in this fight. No one is alone in the feelings that they have by watching some of the things that we have to see and experience.
mhm,
So that's another thing.
right. So with that, we have discussed the things that are going on now and what we see for season 2, what we see moving forward. But the episodes that got the most comments and responses were the episodes from the roundtable discussion.
Yes.
When our listeners heard not just our voices, but the voices of other people that they could also relate to, um, the response was a lot stronger. And I feel like those conversations really hit home.
Because those conversations were personal.
They were,
Those
yeah, they were real.
conversations, they were real and personal. And the at the time when we recorded it, it was just a girls' night in.
Mm-hmm.
And we were like, we're just going to talk how we normally talk. But the only difference is we're going to record this conversation.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, people were aware of what was happening, but they were still open and honest about how they were feeling at that moment. The one truth, one question was a good icebreaker
Mm-hmm.
for that particular setting. And that was just a an idea off the top of my head. Like
Mm-hmm.
I was just like, how can we get the conversation started and make it so that everybody can participate? So that one truth, one question was a good way of going about that. Me and you had a conversation where you were like, well, after listening to what you heard, do you still feel the same way? Are
Mm-hmm.
you still in the same space that you were in then? And I told you that I was better, but I could be greater
Mm-hmm.
than where I was then. After hearing yourself speak about something that's so close to you at that moment, or having your friends say some of the things that they say, and you not really being in tune to those feelings until that moment, definitely broke barriers down. For me, it allowed me to be more sensitive to the feelings of others, and it allowed me to be more honest with myself, but in a way that's constructive. Like, I feel like you can act out of anger. And I think in those situations, in those conversations, a lot for me personally, I was responding out of anger for where things were or how things were happening. But I can be upset about it. Whatever the question or conversation may be, I can be upset about it, but I need to be able to maneuver my way through it constructively without all the feelings. And I feel like moving into season 2, for me personally, that's what I plan on doing.
Another good thing that came out of that conversation is, as you were saying, you were in the space that you were in, but we had those other voices that were able to counteract that
Mm-hmm.
and offer perspective from their point of view. And I think that was really important, because sometimes when we're with the same people all the time, you're in the same mind space, and you don't you you're not really as able to help one another, because you want your girl to be good and you want to ride with her. So you may not exactly be telling her everything. But when you have these open discussions and you have voices from several different people, they offer perspective. They
You
offer
can give
perspective that you may
tidbits,
not have had when you had just that one-on-one conversation.
and that's what I'm saying. You can address the conversation and like a round table talk, as they would say. You could say, well, this thing has been hard for me to talk to my friend about, so this is what I said, right? Or you could just kind of give a little bit, but then you let everybody else fill in the blanks for you.
So let's go back to the discussions. Let's go back to the roundtable discussion. There were some specific things that were addressed in that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, in the first episode that was shared from that discussion, what did we cover?
We talked about um, what you would tell your younger self, which brought about a lot of things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that one was
um,
a good one. Yeah, and
how
that
to
that that one threaded through the rest of the conversations.
it
We
really
always
did.
came back to that.
It did, because ultimately the conversation is providing revelation.
Mm-hmm.
Every question is something that you learn from as time, goes on. But then you were like, hey, had I known then what I know now, my life would be different. Well, that's the hope anyway, but that's not always the case. But it's always good to have that perspective. If
Mm-hmm.
not the experience, have the perspective. Everybody doesn't have to go through something to learn something.
Right.
You can learn by someone else's perspective on what they've been through. And so that's important for me, because you don't always want to get burned by the fire. You know, the fire is hot, you walk away from it. That's what would you tell your younger self kind of comes from.
Mm-hmm. Just like Beanie Siegel said, I go through it so you wouldn't do it after me.
So, yes, he
Hey,
does.
I'm just keeping it around, you know what I'm saying?
No, you right.
So, we came back to that quite a bit. What would you tell your younger self? Um, and then in the second part of that, where we talked about the relationships, and one of our contributors, she was very open and honest about her experience. I really appreciate that from her. I want to thank her for doing that because she connected with a lot of listeners. They were able to see their experience in hers, and from the end of her conversation, the end of her what she was saying, she came out of it hopeful. She came out of it positive. She, she went through a lot in her relationship. I'm talking specifically about the one she got married young and he came into her, her family. She already had a child and all that. And they got together, and when it was ending and he was saying, it's not that I don't want to be married, I don't want to be married to you. That was profound.
It
There are
was.
so many men that feel that way that do not just come out and say it. But even though she had that experience, she came out of it. I mean, she was resilient. She came out of it and she said, I know what I've experienced. I don't want to do this in the next one.
You're right. And you said something that made sense. There are a lot of men out there who feel that and won't say that, but there are also women out there who feel that and won't say that either. So her having that conversation, going through that experience directly, and being able to move on from that and get into a positive relationship where things do work out for her, says a lot about the ability to move on.
Mm-hmm.
You can be in the moment of something so negative and heartbreaking, and we've all experienced that, but just seeing that someone else was able to get through it is a testament that you yourself can get through it. And I appreciated that she shared that with us because that was deep.
It was deep. It was deep. It
So
was personal and it was real. And I, like I said in the past episode, I appreciate each and every one of them trusting us to share their story and providing some, like I said, fuel for the fire,
yeah.
fuel for what we're going to move into the last part of that episode where we had those tough conversations. Um, how to approach your friend when when there's an uncomfortable thing that you have to say to her, and because you love her, you come to her and you want to tell her, you don't want to hurt her, you always want the best for her, but it's not easy.
I think we've all encountered that experience. If you have a friend or anybody you call a friend, you've encountered that experience where something needed to be said and you didn't know how to say it, but you wanted to be the one to be honest with that person. You didn't want a stranger, like she said, approaching your friend and saying, hey, this is a problem, or it's embarrassing
Mm-hmm.
that the person closest to you cannot be honest with you about a situation, that a total stranger has to come to the forefront and say, this is what I'm hearing or feeling or whatever the case may be. And the particular person in the episode, she explained why she wasn't able to be honest. She explained how it felt to want to talk to her friend and not be able to. But she was able to come out of that experience and that conversation, having that conversation with her friend and saying, you know what? Moving forward, I am never going to hold anything back from you. I'm always going to be honest. I'm always going to tell you how I feel because at the end of the day, I'm your friend. I love you. And I want to be the one to tell you first before a stranger does.
Mm-hmm.
I was talking to my mom the other day, and we were talking about that. And I was talking about how, we could have these conversations, but sometimes it's not what you say, but how you say it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not what's being said, but who it's coming from.
Oh, yeah.
And she used the example that as a mother, you tell your kids don't do certain things, right? She thinks that we don't listen to her, or
Mm-hmm.
we don't take heed to the message. And then it's not until somebody else says it, like a friend or aunt or a trusted coworker says something to you, and you're like, you know what, so and so said XYZ, and I didn't really like to hear it, but it made sense. My mom is like, but I've been telling you that all along. So I don't care how you receive it. I just want you to receive it.
Mm-hmm.
But as a friend, you want to be the one to kind of lay the burden down a little bit softer, a little bit sweeter than a stranger would. So that conversation was a good conversation. And I'm glad that the direction of the conversation went to that as a topic.
Mm-hmm.
Because I want to say the question was very broad. Like,
The question originally was, how do you not say something? So
yeah,
it was
how do you,
extremely broad. It could have gone several different ways.
and it went there, and that
Mhm.
was good.
It was good. It was good. And just like you said with that conversation with your brother, it does, we can't always receive everything from everybody. So that's another part of the reason why this is taking place and the benefit of this forum, where you may not have been able to receive it from your mother. You can connect with the person that you don't know that you're listening to in the podcast and say, you know what, I had that experience too. Even though your mom has been telling you over and over again, just to hear it from somebody else and know that you're not alone, that makes a difference.
And let's be clear, moving into season 2, we have offered up the email address, right? It's out there. Take note of it. If you have a question or you have a concern or something that you want to discuss and you don't want it to be public, we can review that and have that conversation anonymously,
Right.
not revealing who you are, but still having that conversation, whether it's between me and you or it's amongst a group of women.
Right.
But the conversations can be had. So don't feel like you want to express something, but then you don't want everybody to know about it, because it doesn't have to be everybody's business.
Right.
So using the email is a good way to share with us and allowing us to kind of go through that as content.
And that email address is from her point of view, llc@gmail.com. Please use it.
Yeah.
So,
do you think that season 1 was successful overall? If you could rate it 1 to 10, how do you feel about it?
because it's mine, I'm going to be harder on it than I would be on anybody else's.
Mm-hmm.
That's just who I am. So I would give it around a solid 6.5 to 7. I think
I'm
we
right with
accomplished
you.
our goal and mission.
Yeah.
I think it's a good foundation, but it's going to have to be like off the charts for me to give it a 10 because it's mine.
Well, I feel like I give it a 5 to start because, like I said, we took the fear out of it. It's
Mhm.
something that we put off for so long, and then we finally said, let's just go ahead and do this. We got the equipment. We didn't know what we were doing. We didn't know how this was going to go. We were just like, let's just talk. Like, let's just talk about whatever it is that we want to talk about and see where this goes. So we start off with a 5, but I'm with you with the 6.57 because there's so much more that we can do to make this better. And we want to be able to have that room for improvement. So we'll figure out what that is. What is it that we need to do to make it a 10, right? But 6.57 is a good start.
It's a good start. And part of that moving it into the 10 is going to be the interaction that we have with our listeners and, you know, the people that have contributed to this. We want to keep the conversations going. So, like we mentioned before, you know, go to the Facebook page from her point of view, go to the email address and share your thoughts and your comments about what we've done so far and what you would like to see or what you would like to hear in the future. So moving on into season 2, what do you foresee? What kind of conversations or topics do you want to touch on?
I want to continue to do the one question, one truth with the same people that we did it with, but maybe expand the group a little bit more. I want to be able to get perspectives on topics from 18 to 80, right?
Okay.
I want to I want to talk about the things that are affecting us as women. Colorism being one of them, because that's another topic that's been around, but it kind of gets swept under the rug a little bit, and we don't talk about it because it's a hard conversation to have.
It
But
is a hard conversation.
it's a conversation that's needed for us to understand where it comes from and how do we break the mold.
Mhm.
How do we stop feeling this way? How do we make sure that we don't instill this emotion or feeling into our children as they're growing up, because it is a dangerous thing to have. So definitely want to get into that. And I also want to talk about like where we are today as women. Like when we started this a year ago, we were in a totally different space. A year later, we're in a totally different space. So going into season 2, as the climate changes and our personal life change, let's talk about where we are currently in our personal space.
Those are all good topics, and I think the conversations will flow from all of the things that you mentioned. I also think that I would like to explore a little bit more of the reason why. Um, as a researcher, I always want to know the why. And we talked about a lot of the experiences that we've had, and the contributors have spoken about their experiences as well. But I want to dig down into the why we allow these situations to happen, why we stay in these situations, or you know, if you don't know where you're coming from, you can't really know where you're going. So
Mm-hmm.
just finding out why, and then finding out how to make that shift so that we don't transfer that over into the generations that follow behind us. Um, Going back to that, what would you tell your younger self? Our younger selves are here now, and now we can have those conversations with them, knowing why we went through what we went through. And again, we went through it, so you don't have to go through it. So I'm going to explain it to you. You probably do it anyway,
Yeah.
because that's how we do things. But you will have uh, us and that to come back to kind of guide you through it and know that you can get through it. So those are some of the things I want to explore, the whys.
I'm really open into I'm really open to what other people want to hear, what they want to talk about, how they're feeling. I'm really interested in that type of engagement.
Mhm.
Um, because I think that the perspective of a woman comes from their own experience, but
Right,
it also comes from where they come from. Like
right.
different states experience different things in different situations. Um, we're in Maryland, right? I come from Pittsburgh. When I talk to my Pittsburgh friends, the perspective on life is a little bit different than when I'm talking to my Maryland friends because the experience is different.
Hmm.
So I think that's important. So I'm really open to what other people are feeling and what they want to talk about
Hmm. I
and
think that's
how
going
they
to be.
want to talk about it. Do you want to have an open forum conversation of women at a table? Do you want to do a one-on-one, I ask you a question, you answer type of thing? Like, how do you want the response to come back to you? Do you want to engage men, right? Do you want to have the perspective of a man into the conversation to understand, yeah, us women think a certain way, but how does the men, how are they perceiving this?
Yeah, I think that's going to be important moving forward. I don't know how in depth it will, manifest in season 2. We have yet to see how that's going to unfold, but I think that men need to be a part of the conversation. I think we need to make sure that we are inclusive. We need to make sure that we include the LGBTQ community because there are women in that community. We want to hear her point of view, all of her point of view,
Yeah.
and we need to make sure that we're inclusive. Like I said, we need to involve all of the communities, and we need to make sure that the voices are heard.
But we can only do that. I mean, we can do that on the scale that we're doing it on, but to do it on a larger scale, we need to know what the viewers are thinking, what the viewers are feeling, what it is that the viewers want. And we, unlike a lot of other platforms, we're opening that door open to anyone who wants to be a part of it. If you just want to have the conversation with us, we can rope you into that.
Mm-hmm.
It could be me, you, and another person.
Mm-hmm.
So we're open to having those conversations in the forum that works for the viewers.
So, as we opened up, I'm very satisfied with what we've done so far. I'm glad that we were able to accomplish that. Um, I'm glad that we got over the hump, got over the fear, and just put it out there. And sometimes you just got to rip the band-aid off and just go with it. And I feel like that's what we did. And I am well pleased. I think that we can only go up from here. I think
agree.
that as we continue to have conversations, we continue to include everyone. Um, I think that, like I said, I think that this can only get better.
I agree. I'm very hopeful for what it is that we're going to do as we move forward. But ultimately, our goal is to affect other women in a positive way, but being able to affect the change in our own life. If that's all this does for me and you, like I'm grateful for that part of it, because like I said, we talk all the time. Our conversations are epic, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we have the perspective of trusted friendship.
Right.
I take what you say to heart. You take what I say to heart.
Right.
And it means something. But just being able to open that up to other people, even if they're just having those conversations amongst them friends. You may hear a topic and say, hey, you know what? I've been wanting to talk about that with my friend. Let me go about it this way.
Right.
So I'm hopeful for what is to come. I'm actually excited about it. The content that will unfold.
I think it's going to be good. I mean, we have already set the foundation. I think that, when we get more voices and just keep the conversation going. That's the main thing. You just have to keep the conversation going. And I think we're going to be able to accomplish that. So I want to thank everybody who has listened so far. I want to encourage you to please like and share the Facebook page, and also share the podcast on Facebook, not Facebook, on Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, and on Podbean. Um, tell your friend to tell a friend, and we can keep these conversations going.
Yeah. And let's not have shame in this. Let's go into this honestly, like we've been doing, and just reveling in the moment, right? There's a lot of things in the past conversations that I told you, like, I wish I could take that back. But that's how I felt in the moment, and that was my reality at the time, as it was for many of the other women. So if people are open to that, we're open to that. And that's really what we want.